A few years ago, I saw a presentation that Tom Kabat gave for Redwood Energy. He inspired me to think differently about my electric panel, which is the nerve center of my home and a crucial piece of the electrification puzzle. Tom is an energy and electrification consultant for Good Gridison and also an environmental quality commissioner who assisted in developing Menlo Park's innovative all-electric reach code for new construction. Tom, welcome.
Thank you very much, Amy. It's great to be here.
So if you want to retrofit your home to go all electric, do you need to upsize to a 200 amp panel? And is this a hurdle that we all need to jump over eventually?
Well, no, we don't. Most homes can electrify just fine on a 100 amp panel because the electric panel is really one of the most underutilized pieces of equipment in the house. A 100 amp panel can deliver 24 kilowatts of power at one time. That's a whole lot of power. 24 kilowatt hours in an hour. That's equal to 32 horsepower. So it's like a third of a car engine out there running on the side of the wall. So that can deliver a lot of energy. We just have to make a plan for how to use it well and not overstep different parts of it.
So why would someone not want to upgrade to a 200 amp panel or larger?
Yeah, well, a few big reasons. In our area, labor is so precious and it takes a lot of labor to replace a panel and upsize it. So by avoiding upsizing it, we can leave the workforce available to do other electrification work and we can save ourselves a lot of money. Typically around here, $3,000 or $4,000 of saved costs for not having to upsize an overhead wire service panel, and maybe up to $20,000 if your wires ran underground to your house. So lots of money savings, and then lots of time savings. Even if you didn't have any slowdowns by the utility, just the time of scheduling this 2-day long project to replace the panel is another time we can save. And then it's great if you don't upsize the panel, you don't have to get in line with other utility customers to get PG&E studies of it. Can your neighborhood take your new upsized panel, or does PG&E have to come out and upsize transformers on the poles around your house? Then because we don't end up leaning as hard on the utility distribution system, they don't need to upsize it as quickly, and that helps keeps rates lower. Because when PG&E upsizes the distribution system, they hang a whole lot of new equipment in the air, and they get to earn a guaranteed 11% rate of return on all that, and that drives up rates. So by staying on our own panels, we can actually help keep rates lower for everyone. And then this basically, all these things together provide for a much faster transition to a safe climate future.
So Tom, I know that you've been co-leading a pilot project in San Mateo County to electrify a bunch of homes without upsizing their panels.
Oh, yes. My partner, Josie Gaylord, and I are working on that project, and along with the San Mateo County staff and contractors. And together, we're all learning a lot about the process of what it's like to try to make a plan and what the plan can contain and how it can be useful for helping us do this transition easier. Because what we're realizing is if we're really going to attack climate change at the speed that the IPCC says we need to be going, we have to electrify everything on the ground, including the homes and the car charging. And we have to make these electrification plans that leave space to get it all done. And so if you don't have a plan and you start electrifying things, it's possible you end up painting yourself into a corner. And you may choose the first appliance to be too big, and then there's not enough room for all the other things to fit. So what we're finding in this study, we're looking at 10 very different homes in San Mateo County and making electrification plans for them by assessing what they have and what they want to switch to and how much circuitry it'll take. And in every case, we've been able to keep them fit on their 100 amp electric panel. And in the easy cases, we're able to do it just with efficient equipment and well-sized equipment. And in the tougher cases, like one with a swimming pool and they want a bigger car charger, we end up using controllers that essentially pause the car charger for a little while the cooking is done. And then when the cooking's over, the car charger restarts, etc.
So what are some of the strategies that can help a homeowner fit all of their electric appliances onto a 100 amp panel?
Yeah, well, it basically pays to kind of treat it like a puzzle. And what you're going to try to do is take a look at what is the equipment available to meet your needs, your end use needs. Like, I need hot water and I need a comfortable space that's both cooled and heated with an efficient heat pump. And I need to get enough energy into my car by morning to be able to do my daily commutes, etc. So we're looking at those different things and trying to see how to fit them together. Basically, what we find is, an electrification plan contains is it can be anywhere from simple to complex. At the simple end, it could be just a list of the sizes and types of appliances needed. Say, like a heat pump water heater that's big storage, like 80-gallon size of storage, but a smaller circuit, say a 15 amp circuit that doesn't draw much power, and it takes advantage of the big storage tank, 65 or 80 gallons, as like a thermal battery, so that it can be slowly charged up during the day, and it's got plenty of hot water to deliver anytime we need it. And then for the heating and cooling, we're finding some of the solutions are just using, say, a ducted 3-ton size. A ton means 12,000 BTUs per hour, but say 3 tons or smaller, inverter driven, and that means computer controlled, that the heat pump can slowly pace itself up and down and really exactly match the temperatures we need in the house. Other things we find in the planning is it pays to look at what is the type of clothes drying they'll want to do. And so on here, I put the most power efficient one, which didn't require any additional circuit. It would be, say, using a combined machine where you put dry, dirty clothes in and 2 or 3 hours later, you get dry, clean clothes out of the same machine. For cooking, where you find when people can use the regular slide-in range, which has a cooktop and an oven in the same appliance instead of a separate wall oven, that saves a lot of power and saves extra circuits by not having wall oven circuits. And then the other thing we learned is that EV circuit sizing is pretty important. People come to their EVs sometimes with this form of range anxiety that's charging anxiety. And then they end up getting these big old 50 amp circuits. And that really is overcharging their car and kind of overstressing the battery by essentially overheating it through a fast input. But just using a right size circuit, and say in this example, a 20 amp 240 volt circuit, that'll give you about 92 miles a day of fill up to the car. And you don't have to fill a whole battery every day. The idea of a big car battery is you can slosh energy over from one day to the next. So, that's the kind of simple version of an electrification plan. It's just a list of the most efficient equipment that really doesn't take up much space. That's kind of putting somebody down towards the I want to leave space category.
So what are some of the devices that allow you to put devices on the same circuit that before you could never put on the same circuit?
Yeah, there's a lot of these are coming out now that are getting pretty interesting. They started with a device early on called Dryer Buddy, which is a little box about this big that had a small, or plugs right into the dryer socket, the 240 volt socket on the wall that your electric resistance dryer plugged into. And then you would plug your dryer into one side of it, and it got power whenever the dryer was turned on. And when the dryer was off, there was another socket on the other side where you could plug in your EV charger. And so your EV would wait until the load of drying was done, and then it automatically activated. So that's the first type, and there are now about 4 brands of that type of plug-in circuit splitter, include brands like NeoCharge, Split Volt, and Dryer Buddy. I've forgotten any others. But then there's hardwired devices, one called Simple Switch, which hardwires in there, and then you it's not just a plug in the wall thing. And then there are pausers that measure the total power running into the whole electric panel. And they only pause your car charger if the whole electric panel loading has gotten up over 80% of its rating, which rarely happens. So in that kind of a system, you'd have very few pauses per year on the car charger, because it's rare that we, in my panel, I rarely get over 20% of its usage. So I would never end up having to pause the car charging on that one. And then there's whole panel solutions like smart panels. There's one from a company called Span.io, and they make a panel that you can prioritize the circuits. And when the panel loading gets up to 80% of its loading, it just starts through the order of dropping a circuit off and saying, okay, now I'm under, and I don't have to drop any more off. Or if there were real high loads, it would drop the second priority circuit off. So there, we've got lots of solutions now, from plug-in devices to hardwired separate devices to hardwired pausers, and now whole panel prioritizers. So more of this is coming on the market that's making controls a really easy way to go about this. Local Menlo Park graphic artist helped us put together this drawing of a 100 amp panel on a 2,000 square foot house, just as an example, showing what are the new green circuits we might be needing to work in for doing the whole house electrification. In this case, we also, in the bottom left, put in a solar electric system. They like to feed back in through about a 20 amp circuit back into the panel. And then we would have an EV charger on it and a heat pump circuit. And in this case, we were able to reuse the furnace air handler circuit for doing something else. But there'd be a circuit for the clothes dryer and for the electric cooking, and a heat pump water heater. And but I just thought I'd share this simplified graph, which looks at kind of these 5 main end uses in the house we're going to try to electrify, and the counted watts on the electric panel according to the National Electric Code for these different types of devices. So here's 5 different dryers, 2 microwaves, a couple of cooking arrangements, et cetera. Let me just show you quickly that combined washer dryer machine adds no additional watts to the panel sizing, whereas a big electric resistance dryer that's very common adds about 2,000 counted watts. And then a microwave, the same size microwave, just counts differently. If it's on the countertop, it's part of the countertop circuit's already counted. If it's built in and attached to the house, it just counts as another about 500 or 600 watts. And then the cooktop, if you have a range, which means it's a cooktop with the oven under it, it counts about 3,000 watts. But if you've got a separate cooktop where you have wall ovens, they count more. And then the difference between this is, say, one wall oven versus a double wall oven. And then in heat pump water heaters, there are new 120 volt versions coming out, which count very little on the panel. And then there's the most common version that's already out is the 30 amp water heater that counts heavier on the panel. And then we have now about 6 varieties or 7 of power levels for EV charging. More than half of people just charge their EV from plugging it into a 120 volt plug using the charger that comes in the trunk of their EV. And that's able to give you about 35 miles a day, about 13,000 miles a year, and doesn't add any counted watts to the load calculation. And then here I just go through a series of 10, 15, up to 50 amp circuits and how much they count on the electric panel and how many thousands of miles of charging you get per year by upsizing those circuits. So these resources like the retrofit guide and like the Watt Diet site are pretty useful for folks taking a look at that. But I really recommend kind of sketching out your own ideas for your electrification plan and then sharing those with the contractors you select so they know that your goal is staying on the electric panel. And then they're able to pick the equipment that helps you stay there, to stay within your constraints.